We're facing basically an era of decentralization of all technologies, all industries. Power is going to decentralize. Next 5 to 10 years, probably more than in the 5-year range than in the 10-year range. The 5 most valued entities are not going to be companies, but networks like blockchains. Amazon started with books and now they sell everything. Ripple is starting with one use case, and it's going to be not only Ripple, but many other blockchains and many other digital assets are going to be huge in not such distant future.
You talk about trillion-dollar companies, and there's some trillion-dollar people that are going to be birthed from this movement as well, which is just incredibly mind-blowing to think about. Hey, what's going on, family and friends? We're back with another exclusive production. Today, I'm joined by a dear friend and ally to the channel. Let me bring him up onto the stage here. Boom, there he is. Meet Fran De Olza. He's an XRP-focused content creator and attorney turned investor who aims to launch his very own investment group one day. Fran blends legal insight with on-the-ground market analysis, breaking down XRP digital assets and macro trends in a way that's sharp, accessible, and grounded in real-world strategy, and most importantly, in Spanish. Fran, how you doing today, sir?
Thank you for having me. Really good to be able to connect with you, this time digitally, after kind of knowing you physically in New York and Ripple Swell. And looking forward to this conversation. I'm sure the English community is going to be happy to see a different view from the Spanish community also.
Yep.
It's very blended because they consume in both languages. But yeah, thank you for having me on your channel.
This is at Ripple's welcome reception. That's the night leading into their 2-day conference, which is Ripple Swell, their flagship event, which caters to their institutional market participants. So again, this is a wonderful opportunity that we get to, again, reconnect digitally. And we're going to dive in and recap what was said or what you experienced at Ripple Swell, and also what you saw at the XRP Meetup, because I believe I saw you in the crowd there. But before we do, let's do a little recap and introduction on just who you are, sir, just so people can better understand and be familiar of what your overarching mission is and your passions are. Floor is yours, Fran.
Sure. So I'm Fran. I'm from Spain. I was born here in Barcelona. And basically, I lived for the first 10 years out of Spain, came back to Spain, to Madrid, 8 years. After I moved to Barcelona, studied law there. And after finishing law, I did a master in management where basically one of the teachers made he wanted to highlight the importance of decentralization, but not only decentralization of finance, blockchain, but that we're facing basically an era of decentralization of all technologies, all industries. Everything is good. Power is going to decentralize. But later on the road, to make the story short, I discovered in the year 2020 Bitcoin. And long story short, after Bitcoin, I discovered Ethereum. After Ethereum, I discovered XRP. And in the year 2022, in August, a little bit before August, I decided that it was a good idea to fill in the gap for the Spanish community of XRP content creators, because there weren't many at that time. Now there's a much bigger community of content creators, but 3 years ago there was very little. And long story short, yeah, here I am again, trying to share my subjective perspective and bring value to the community. And yeah, just trying to ride the wave of Web3.
Oh man, we are definitely on that wave. And now the question is, Fran, where are we on that wave? Are we way out in front of it? Are we deep in the barrel, or are we just behind it? That's actually a quote from a billionaire and decorated VC investor named Bill Tai. I've had the pleasure of actually interviewing him a couple times. And so anyways, that's an analogy that he likes to use, surfing, which aligns with me because that's what I do here almost every morning. I want to bring up onto the stage is a photo. You mentioned that there's more content creators that are popping up in the Spanish community. And here on the screen here is a graphic of some of the attendees that attended our recent XRP meetup, which was actually the same night as the reception. When planning this XRP community event, I didn't want to step on anyone's toes or get in the way of Ripple's, obviously their productions and such, but my goal was to complement and empower some of those people that were also going to be in the area. You traveled from overseas, and so did so many people. I want to say there was about 900 attendees at Ripple Swell, but at our event, the XRP Meetup, there was about 60. And in the top right-hand corner of this graphic here is, I think her name is Catalina, but she's a content creator out of Spain as well. Maybe you guys have either worked together in the past or maybe not yet, and there's an opportunity for introductions. But yeah, it was a wonderful opportunity to, one, just be in the room with you and so many like-minded professionals that are all hovering above the target and have been so for quite some time. So back to my analogy, I think we've been way in front of that wave is where I'm getting at.
Exactly.
That's
I think
funny.
we're just about to take off with the wave. I think the fun thing about these, especially if you're talking about investments, is to be before the wave starts. You don't want to be behind the wave and that the wave crashes. You know it better because you.
Oh, absolutely. No, we're well positioned in the lineup, and we've been so for quite some time. Now it's just we got to maintain that position in the lineup and not get knocked off the wave or lose our stance on the board. But anyways, enough about surfing, sir. Let's talk about blockchain, finance, and all things that are within your domain. Being the fact that we are coming off the heels of Ripple Swell, what was your perspective? What did you gain? Any experiences that you had that are worth sharing with the audience?
Many things, too many things to share with the audience, but I'll try to synthesize it because basically, if the audience has had the possibility of going to any kind of event in the last years, you've seen not only Ripple Swell, any kind of event, crypto related, Paris Blockchain Week, European Blockchain Convention, or Singapore, or whatever convention you go to learn about crypto, you could see the change in the panels and the people attending. So one of the members of the board of RLUSD, he worked for the Central Bank of India, and he even told the audience the last time he was in Ripple Swell, it was 6 years ago, and the sentence he used was, "I see much more suits now than 6 years ago."
Yeah.
That kind of shows how the strategy of Ripple was the correct 10 years or more than 10 years ago, rather than trying to fight against central banks and institutions. So that's one area you could see how Ripple Swell, at least from my perspective, is like until now. I'm pretty sure it's going to be much more normal from now on in the future. Kind of the merge of digital assets and traditional banking. It actually felt like a banking event, not a crypto event, just because of. You were going to say something. You were going to say something.
This is lining up our conversation to a T. I created some assets in preparation of our conversation because even at our XRP meetup, we had on stage for the first panel, Jake Claver, he's in this alternative investment landscape bucketed under crypto, but he's very much entrenched in traditional finance. He's bringing the TradFi aspect into this ecosystem. And then right next to him was Hugo Filion, the CEO of Flare, and who's bringing in the DeFi rails, the technology and such. So to see these guys, one, have, I don't want to say different perspectives. They were complementary most definitely, but you could see when Hugo said that we're DeFi and we're going to basically soak up and absorb the entire market, which includes you. And Jake says you can't really be anything without the regulations and the infrastructure that TradFi brings along as well. But at the end of the discussion, you saw that these two were very much ready to do business and partner. Actually, do you mind? Could I play a clip of those guys on stage?
Of course, yeah.
Excellent. Let's do that. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
One of the things digital asset treasuries want to do is they're companies, they want to maximize the amount of money they have on their balance sheet. And heretofore, there have been very limited opportunities for XRP to be used to generate yield, if any at all. There have been a few like Celsius, but that turned out to not be so great. And we set out building Flare really with the idea that you didn't have to give your XRP to a middleman or essentially a centralized counterparty in order to get something on it. We thought we wanted to build an ecosystem around XRP where there are financial applications that allow you to put your XRP to work. And that's exactly what we're doing with the launch of FXRP. And I think that's why Vivo Power, although I don't want to talk to them, approached us, because they wish to grow the assets on their balance sheet. And Flare is essentially one of the key planks to them being able to get yield on the XRP they control.
So we would be that central counterparty that
I was
people
going to
would
say.
trust. And that's okay. We want to involve DeFi strategies into what we're doing. We've effectively created a staking mechanism for XRP without having smart contract risk, is the way that we've gone about it. And we've done it with institutional partners inside of institutional custody, and it is cumbersome, and there's a lot of moving pieces and counterparts to be able to do that, which being on chain would significantly reduce and compress those costs and provide a lot of benefits. So that's the next iteration of what we're looking to do, is be able to bring DeFi into the institutional ecosystem while still mitigating all those risks that we're concerned about. We want to make sure that we have insurance. We want to make sure that there's oversight. We want to make sure that there's not going to be any bad actors or ways where we have another Celsius or FTX situation. And yeah, it's been wild. There's obviously insatiable appetite for people to be able to generate return on this asset because there's no state staking. There's no native way to do it. And any way that you did have in the past has not ended up so well.
So a couple things that I thought were interesting, as Hugo mentioned, they don't manage the products once they deploy them. The products essentially manage themselves. With that being said, there needs to be a human element involved if there was some type of turbulence or friction in any type of transaction or processes. And so there's got to be someone you can call and speak to, especially when you have millions, hundreds of millions, billions of dollars involved. But as you can see, these guys are hungry to work with each other, bringing in different elements and professionalisms into the conversation or equation. What are your thoughts, Fran?
Yeah, so first of all, continuing the conversation in regards to banking and crypto. To give a little bit of context, the CEO of Galaxy is an ex-Goldman Sachs banker. So many of the players in the crypto industry are ex-finance guys. Just the thing is, retail investors or a lot of institutional investors even are not even aware of who's building what. They just saw until now, until quite recently, last 12 months, this has changed a little bit. But they just saw speculation and high risk, but this is changing. And in regards to the clip you just presented, I'm really glad we are reaching this point of the conversation, finally, because it's what I've been saying for 3 years. It's not a competition between finance and digital assets or decentralized finance. We're going to see a merger of this. And I'm really happy to see the conversation between Flair and Jake in this case, because I'm pretty sure decentralized finance is the future, but there's going to have to be an adoption curve. You're going to have to make investors feel safe with some concepts, right?
Yep.
For example, the risk of smart contracts. Depending on what type of investor you are, you might not perceive it as a risk. But so if you're managing billions, you want to receive returns without being able to, or trying to mitigate as much as possible the risk of hacking. And I'm not saying this is not hate for Flair. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that I would actually, some part of your portfolio would make, without this being a recommendation, but it would make sense that part of your portfolio, you could use Flair to earn yield on it, right? Maybe 50-50, traditional finance, not 50-50, but 20-20, for example. There's many strategies, right? I'm really glad we are reaching this point where they both realize that they need each other, and it's going to be much more productive if instead of fighting, they've already reached that point where the conversation is, okay, we're going to adopt this technology. It's going to happen. I think the sentence that Ripple used for the Ripple Swell, it's happening, describes perfectly what the moment, how much momentum digital assets is gaining right now. And it's just a matter of time, actually.
Oh, said, did you by chance get to see the billboard on Times Square that said it's happening?
I didn't see it live. I saw the screenshots on Twitter, but yeah, it's happening.
It was in our face and right in millions of people's face, and as it's been for quite some time. And it's so funny because even when I was in the airport at JFK, many of these were non-blockchain advertisements whatsoever. These were iPhone advertisements, actually, to be specific. But it's so funny because we've seen information or at least inclinations that Ripple might be providing the technology for the new release for the Apple Tap and Pay. And so what I think is very interesting is even the setup of the lenses of the iPhone right here, the three circles is just looks so much like their logos. I just feel like there's a lot of symbolism that it's right in everyone's face. But anyways, I'd like to take a step back, Fran, if you don't mind. How did you first become aware of? You mentioned your crypto was involved in your class, you stumbled upon it, you stumbled upon Bitcoin, but was there any early beginnings that made you really think like, aha, DeFi is the future? You say you've been talking about it for the past 3 years, but what really positioned this new technology or this new way of business and transfer of value? How did this become centerfold for you? What was that trigger moment?
The aha moment. Yeah, the
The
aha
aha moment.
moment.
Thank you.
Exactly. So that would be the moment I realized that, for example, we have an at for email, to sending email. We have a piece of code to be able to send information as many times as we want. It doesn't cost anything because it's almost free. You just have to pay internet. The moment I realized that the at for finance hadn't been decided yet, we could have a totally different conversation about who's going to be the winner. But it hasn't been decided yet. It hasn't actually been decided yet, or maybe it has. The moment I realized that the piece of code that is going to be the base for transferring money globally, not only for retail, but for wholesale payments, specifically for wholesale payments. And I understand that the value of information has been able to create giants like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Alphabet. Imagine how big these players are going to be once we start seeing the winners of the of the email, but for transferring value. Trillions. Just in the first opening panelist in Ripple Swell was the CEO of NASDAQ. That should tell you something, right? The first use case, she said, wasn't about tokenization, that's going to come, but post negotiation settlement. Because for the users, you can buy and sell very fast, but the reality is that the back end of all these processes is very costly. It's T+1, T+2, and blockchain. The first use case, in her words, not mine, that means the first at the email of the finance world is going to be some specific DLTs. Who are the winners? That's going to happen. And for me, that is, if that doesn't give you goosebumps about how huge the opportunity is going to be, these companies move daily trillions of dollars. So it's going to be a massive opportunity.
You know what? And that tees up another clip that I have also from the XRP Meetup. It was of Vivo Power's chairman of the board, their advisory board, Adam Trademan, who was also this former CEO of Ripple SBI, who spoke at the event. And he commented, as he mentioned, and as you say, NASDAQ has already come out and said that they're going to tokenize all the companies on their exchange. And so and for me, I think we're moving into a time where they're doing that to compete with other exchanges that are doing just that at the same time. And so let me bring up a quick clip of Adam right now, if you don't mind, Fran.
Of course.
So I'm Adam Trademan. I'm the chairman of the advisory board for Vivo Power. Vivo Power is a digital asset treasury company, actually originally a renewable energy company founded about 10 years ago that pivoted to a DAT strategy earlier this year. I was the CEO of SBI Ripple Asia, ran all of Ripple's business across Asia for several years and sat on the board of Ripple Labs in San Francisco. And so they tapped my expertise and relationships with Ripple in order to enable that strategy. Digital asset treasury companies like Michael Saylor's MicroStrategy or MetaPlanet in Tokyo have been very effective at buying Bitcoin at spot prices and using complex traditional financial tools as well as yield generating opportunities in order to generate a higher yield than the net underlying asset itself can generate. In the last 60 days or so, we've seen several, and many actually, of the digital asset treasury companies collapse. A lot of the stocks have been down by 80, 90%. This is reminiscent of what we saw in the early 2000s when hedge funds went public as entities that were publicly traded, basically like a venture capital company going public, right? And initially they traded at much higher to their net asset value, and eventually they collapsed completely.
Yeah, so in that clip, his comment in regards to the NASDAQ wasn't included, but at the same time, there was still a lot to unpack in Adam's communications to the attendees at the XRP Meetup. What are your thoughts about digital asset treasury firms like Vivo Power or now Evernorth? It's interesting to see, I believe even today, MicroStrategy is taking a little bit of a hit. And so it's creating some uncertainties and fear in the market for those who are participating in that investment vehicle. Do you think that this is going to create opportunities for those that are leveraging the XRPL? What are your thoughts?
So I think it's going to be a bumpy ride until we start seeing more stability and more the utility market kick start off. But once that happens, I think it's going to be much more stable. I was able to, I think you were also there with the panel of the CEO of Evernorth and David Schwartz and also the Arrington. And it was an interesting conversation because what they're trying to do is, as soon as this starts and they start gaining momentum, the ways of generating yield, or what is interesting for these investors, is that the way of generating yields for the investors are also going to expand. And they also said that in the case of Evernorth, that some part of the yield is going to be reinvested to buy more XRP. So you're going to be able to, they were trying to make a lot of emphasis on the fact that maybe it's going to be more interesting from a ROI perspective to buy shares of Evernorth. We'll see how that plays out. But I saw really David Schwartz really focused on the yield part, and also Michael Arrington. So I think it's a new game, and I'm pretty sure we're going to see some big surprises because of how many players are going to start adopting this strategy that was seen as risky. I'm not so sure about the viability of Michael Saylor and his MicroStrategy. He is doing a pretty aggressive strategy. We'll see how that plays out. But he, just as a little bit of context, he was condemned for fraudulent. How do you say it? When you cook the books in the year 2000. I don't know how Michael Saylor is going to do. I don't know if he's going to do well in the future, but I do know that this type of company is going to expand. We're going to see more players do the same, and it's just the beginning.
Wow. I didn't know Michael Saylor was a chef.
Yes, he was condemned for not tax, but basically cooking the books. I don't know how to say it in English, but fraud because he cooked the books of his company.
Wow.
Let's hope for the good of the community in general of the digital asset space that it doesn't happen this time, because it's going to affect everybody.
Yeah, man, that is not good for the shareholders and those that are obviously in this space. But as you mentioned, if we are entering some turbulent times, I do see a light at the end of the tunnel, or greener pastures on the back end of whatever those turbulent times bring. I feel like through turbulent times, the market, yes, hardens, but then also it grows and flourishes following such tightening. Anyways, enough about that. What are your thoughts, though, Fran, with your legal background? What's the most common misconception that you're seeing in crypto around regulations, and what reality investors should be mindful of or be considering? We saw the passing of the Genius Bill. I don't know if you went into the room, or the Genius Act, but I don't know if you went into the room at Ripple Swell where there was the timeline of the ecosystem, where it showed Evergreen, or it was Evernorth, the evolution of the creation and birth of the XRP ledger, Bitcoin, Ethereum, the various debit cards and credit cards that have been used throughout the history of this asset class. But then there was a section about the Genius Act that had Donald Trump. There's a photo of that was him framed on the wall there. Did you see that?
Yeah, I saw it.
Yeah, for me, that was just a great moment. What are your thoughts? Is there any regulations that we should be mindful of. We've got the Equal Opportunity Investment Act, which I believe is supposed to be reforming the accredited investor rules. We've got the market infrastructure bill. What are you seeing in your neck of the woods?
So I think regulation is necessary, but you need enough regulation to protect investors, but not to destroy innovation. I think Patrick Witt did a really good explanation on this topic, because there are bad actors. You need to protect investors. We see it constantly, but you can't stop it. You can't stop the internet. You can't stop Web3. So you have to create a legal framework that it helps innovation, fosters innovation, but also protects investors. And I think that what we're facing now is good. It's going to get better. And one thing that I would like to say that is that the SEC, the actual president of the SEC, he said that right now they're not prosecuting because there are no clear guidelines. Once the Clarity Act passes, they will start acting. And I think we're going to see, I think many people thought or think that because Donald Trump is pro-crypto, everybody has a green card to do whatever they want. And that's not the case. And they're waiting because right now the SEC can't act because there's no legal clarity. They still need to have clear guidelines once the Clarity Act is approved. So once that happens, the SEC will say, okay, now we're clear on what is legal, what is not, what we can do, what we can't do. And we're going to see a different attitude of the SEC towards players who are not compliant. One of the changes I've seen also in the community is the change in perspective regards to how to focus. I think that the person who summarized it really was the CEO of Galaxy. He said that he thought a few years ago that crypto was going to rise, banks were going to disappear. And he actually said that it's going to be a merger of both exchanges, cold wallets. Every player in the crypto industry is going to adopt banking standards, and the banks are going to adopt the crypto industry, right? They're going to start offering digital assets, banks, and the crypto industry is going to start being more compliant, including cold wallets. At some point, it's going to happen, even though people don't want to see it. It's a topic of conversation people don't like because it's a lot of this philosophy that I understand and agree about how that's the problem with Bitcoin, right? It started as a philosophy against banks, central banks.
Mm-hmm.
The reality is that even the CEO of Galaxy, he recognized that the strategy of Ripple, trying to work with banks, with regulators, is an optimal strategy because right now they're much further in the road against other competitors because they've done things right. I'm not defending regulators. I'm not defending the government. Everybody tries to play their role. They have their role. I understand inflation. I don't agree with inflation. I don't agree with this legal theft, but it's just how it works. You have to understand the system in order to solve a problem. And I think Ripple did a really good job understanding that in advance before everybody else, while everybody else was trying to wave the flag of fight. They were saying, hey, no, let's talk, let's sit, let's explain them this technology. Let's explain them what it solves, why it's good for them, and they're going to adopt it. And it's happening.
Oh, yeah, it's happening most definitely. It's so interesting to see Mike Novogratz come full circle and give kudos to the XRP community and say that we've been a tight-knit tribe for quite some time, which we have been. And but now you were there at Ripple Swell, Brad Garlinghouse. I believe it was during his or right at the beginning of his keynote panel with Patrick, that they announced that there was but they didn't want to bring too much attention to this announcement, was the $500 million investment from Citadel and Galaxy and those investors. And it just shows, like you mentioned, it's the market coming together, or at least the backers. But it also just shows, and it percolates through the consensus, the circles, the ripples. They're all, yes, working in a decentralized manner, but still all fighting for the same. And you're, like you mentioned, it's still, and now the big banks are seeing what attributes the community is having an affinity towards. So they're seeing what features the community and the markets are wanting through these new high growth channels and investment vehicles. And so I just think it's very interesting to see how the symbiosis between this alternative investment space or this crypto world, decentralized world, this DeFi world, versus the TradFi or the traditional world as we know it's the non-DeFi, the non-Web3, call it Web 2. So I think we're at, like you mentioned, we're at this very pivotal moment, and I'm curious to see what happens now as a speculator and holder of XRP. What's going to happen with XRP now that even yesterday there was the spot XRP ETF, that Canary Capital had just launched. What are your thoughts on the ETF movement, and what does this mean for this decentralized crypto world?
I think it's a interesting topic because ETFs. I never talk about the price. I never talk about dates or prices with XRP or in general any digital assets. I just try to talk about utility, what it's solving, why it's important, what markets does XRP serve a purpose right now, in which markets in the future that are going to be created over the years, micropayments, AI, robots, all these digital ecosystems are going to explode, gaming, metaverse. All these micropayments are going to explode, and maybe XRPL will have a purpose. Not only XRPL, many digital assets, right? But it's difficult not to talk about price when we're talking about the launch of an ETF about XRP. I'm not going to talk about price. I'm just going to talk about
the price, Fran.
no, I never do it. It's the most the most repeated question is, Fran, what price do you think XRP is going? I never answer the question. And it's not because I don't have an opinion. It's because I think we should focus the conversation on other stuff.
It's funny. Every time I get asked what I think the future price is, I tell them, go talk to Fran.
Exactly. So in regards with the ETF, there's not that many. If retail investors, I think it's around 2% have this total supply of XRP. So if there is a big demand, I think we're going to see a change in price. Let's leave it there. The first month, the CEO of Canary Capital expects something between 5 and 10 billion in demand. Jeez. So that's a lot. And just to put things in context, the launch of the ETF from Canary Capital, it's a fund that is it's a very small fund compared to Wisdom Tree and all the other managers of money, of capital, that are going to launch an ETF. I'm sure BlackRock is going to launch one, even though they haven't announced yet. I think it's Franklin Templeton has 1.5 trillion in assets under management. So if we,
you said, sorry to interrupt, but you said it's relatively small fund, but I believe out of the 900 that have been released to date, it was the highest performing with, I want to say 60 billion in trading volume the first 24 hours, and then also another
60 million.
Oh, yeah, 60 million. What? Yeah, 60 million in trading volume. I don't know. Did I say billion? Excuse me.
No problem.
And then also a few hundred million in just inflows. And this is kudos to Stephen McClurg. He was at Ripple Swell. He spoke on stage. Did you get to brush elbows with him there?
No, I didn't have time. No, but probably next time I should.
Yeah, most definitely. I reached out to him yesterday to give him a congratulations and invite him on the channel. So maybe when he comes on the channel here, we can have a roundtable discussion. We can all have our chances to ask our highest ranking questions to him.
Exactly. And yeah, so basically, if that tells you everything about how much demand pressure there is right now. It's such a small company. It's not a small company, but small compared to Wisdom Tree or Franklin Templeton or BlackRock in the future, has such a high demand, and they already break records. I can't avoid thinking that once the other more than 10 ETFs are going to be launched, we're probably going to see a high demand. I don't know if that's going to immediately impact the price, because actually it's not going to impact immediately the price. It's T+1, so the money comes and the next day they go and buy the XRP that is needed based on the demand. So I think it's an interesting time to see the launch. I think it's probably going to break more records. And really, I'm really looking forward to see the rest of the week to see how all the other ETFs are approved, launched finally, and see the real demand of investors. Because in regards to XRP, the demand is very different to other assets. Solana is much more focused on meme coins. So I think we might face a surprise.
Yeah, Yeah, I was just put a photo on screen of actually some photos taken from Ripple Swell, and top right hand corner is that photo with Steve McClurg, and also that's Desiree Marino to his right or the left of the photo. She is a vice president of the private capital markets at Citibank, and like you mentioned, that event was catering to the bankers or the institutional partners so they could learn more about what Ripple is doing in particular, and which I think it's just a beautiful time, not just for Ripple, but for many of us who've been passionately following this company day in and day out, and also not just following, but investing into the story with either our time, our money, and everything else that's involved. So you're thinking that the market is going to, or not without bringing up price, but the value of XRP is going to increase due to the demand and the amount of, I would say what are your thoughts, Fran, with the escrow that Ripple has, the 40 billion, let's just ballpark it, in the care custody control of the escrow. Do you think any of that has been pre-assigned to these ETFs? What are your thoughts?
I do think
Pre-allocated?
it's an interesting topic. It's an interesting topic. So in the valuations of Ripple, they've valued the company in around 40 billion. So that means that they're not including the escrow, if I understood correctly, because if you include the escrow, if the escrow is around 37 billion and the price of XRP is above $2, that means that you have almost 70 billion just on XRP.
Yeah.
So my reasoning is, okay, because I studied law at university, my reason is, okay, maybe they can't put the escrow in their balance sheet because some of it has already been, we know there's around 1,700 NDAs. It was revealed in one of the lawsuits. So maybe it was pre-allocated to some institutions or some governments or some countries, some central banks. I don't know, because it's pure speculation. But there's something tells me that Ripple has plans with the escrow, especially also because now that the Clarity Act is going to be approved, there's a threshold about 20% that in order to be considered decentralized, the mechanism of validation has to be completely, you have to have less than 20% control of the process. And that's not a problem with XRPL because Ripple has less than 20%. But you also have to have less than 20% of ownership of the digital assets. And Ripple has 37%. I think we might see the disclosure. I'm not going to say see the disclosure, but if they don't say anything, there's going to something has to happen in the process, even with regulators. Maybe the public doesn't have the need to know the information, but at least regulators will need to be informed of who owns what. Maybe we will never know by now, at least once the regulation passes by. But supposedly Ripple should get rid at least from between 19, basically from 37 to have 19% of the escrow under control if you want to be considered decentralized. Or they either disclose that to the government, who are the real owners. That doesn't mean we are going to know it. We might never know it. And that makes sense because they're not counting with the escrow on their balance sheet.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think there's something there, maybe with the ETFs, maybe with some big companies, maybe with, I don't know exactly how it's going to turn out, but yeah.
Yeah, Brad Garlinghouse has confirmed that they don't recognize XRP on their balance sheet, but is there a trigger moment when they do? We'll see. But as you mentioned, that would catapult their valuation considerably. But that's not today. And I don't know if that will ever happen, but it's just interesting, the birth, the evolution, and the decentralization of this asset, this nascent asset. And now as it's now becoming a institutionalized asset as we speak, which is just an incredible moment. And anyways, before I let you go, Fran, because this has been a thought-provoking conversation, I can always have you back on the channel anytime you like. Is there anything, any bold predictions or things that you think that the audience, my audience, would appreciate hearing from you that we haven't discussed as of yet? The floor is yours. Feel free to share what's top of mind.
Yeah, so in regards to bold predictions, I think it's It might be perceived as bold now, but I don't think it's going to be perceived bold in a few years. My thesis is that in the next 5 to 10 years, probably more than in the 5-year range than in the 10-year range, the 5 most valued entities are not going to be companies, but networks, digital assets like blockchains. So right now, I think it's gold with over, I don't know how many trillions, but I'm pretty sure that we're going to see assets whose market cap is in the trillions. Probably, if you take into account the DTCC, it's the biggest company in the world. They manage at around 3.5 quadrillion every year. That's going to adopt that company is going to adopt digital assets, distributed ledger technologies. Even the CEO of Nasdaq told that they use the DTC. Not only this Nasdaq, but many other entities use the DTCC to clear all the value. So it only takes one of those entities to switch to digital assets, and you suddenly start to realize how big this is going to be in the future, in the not that far future. I think less than 5 years. So we're going to see at least 5 networks be bigger than Amazon, be bigger than Facebook, be bigger than gold. I don't know how much time it's going to take, but I'm pretty sure it's inevitable if you take into account that the financial markets are in the trillions. The derivatives market is in the quadrillions, probably 2.4 quadrillions is what the DTCC clears every year only with derivatives. It's going to be a huge market, even bigger once we start having AI agents in the market as co-workers. We're going to have millions of AI agents working. That's going to create a huge network of micropayments, also with robots who are also going to need payments, metaverse. So there's a huge scope of new markets, existing markets, and new markets that are going to be. So for me, this is Amazon started with books and now they sell everything. Ripple is starting with one use case, and it's going to be not only Ripple, but many other blockchains and many other digital assets are going to be huge in not such distant future.
And then birth to a la Ripple Prime,
Exactly.
the go-to for all things finance. And I think that is just incredible branding, incredible story, and it's been just an incredible opportunity to be in the trenches alongside of you, Fran, and cheering on this revolutionary company, team of people. At the end of the day, we're brushing elbows with the individuals that are making the moves at the center of Ripple Labs, and to meet the board and to meet, said the CEO of NASDAQ. Let me bring her. I think I got a photo of her as well. She is right here, bottom left on stage with, oh goodness, Monica Long, the president of Ripple. So some takeaways for me was from this event was listening to Chef, was it Jose
Andres.
Yes, man. What a remarkable individual. And the way that he approaches his humanitarian and reinvigorating some of these countries or regions that have been impacted by storms, you name it, disasters, war. And the way that he reinvigorates some of these companies was not by just providing them with capital, but by providing capital to strategically and empowering some of these, I would just say, market participants or the local restaurants, these hubs that could really make a difference, but might not have the resources and the technology. And he's not just providing liquidity, but the approach and the technology to scale up these local market participants to reinvigorating the local economy. And I just thought that was the way that he broke it down. It just was very in line with the decentralization movement. And to see him on stage, not only on stage at Ripple, but also on stage with the co-founder Chris Larson, was just fantastic. I got to brush elbows with him for one hot second with Chris Larson and take a selfie with him as well. But man, talk about a gentleman that's really made an impact in this ecosystem. An interesting fact that stuck out to me when I was doing research on him was he's sold or made close to $1 billion in profits from selling XRP, but then redeploying that back into political campaigns, growing the economy. And so it's just to see how much growth, exponential growth that these guys have experienced. You talk about trillion-dollar companies, and there's some trillion-dollar people that are going to be birthed from this movement as well, which is just incredibly mind-blowing to think about. So it's just a beautiful time to be alive, beautiful time to be on the front row, seeing the convergence between TradFi and DeFi. Fran, thank you very much for joining me today. It's been a pleasure and a privilege. And before I do let you go, there's one thing that I think there's a reason why we connect so well. I think my mom did a family tree way back in several years ago. And I think not only am I Mexican, but I've got a little bit of Spanish in me, some Basque Spain. Did get to run with the Bulls when I was back in 2011, when I just graduated college up in Pamplona in San Fermin. And this was way before I had an iPhone, but I had an Android at the time, and I managed to sneak it in my pocket because I think when you run with the Bulls, they don't want you running with cameras and things of that nature. But I managed to sneak in a little bit of some selfies here and there. Before I let you go, do you mind if I play a quick replay of the running with the Bulls?
Let's see it.
It is so funny because when I was there, I felt like, and to cement where I was going at with when I was in Spain, I felt like I'd been there before. And I had never been there before, but it was just something about taking the train from Madrid all the way to Spain and just just looking out the window of the train ride and seeing the landscape and the castles that speckled the rolling hills there. Is just, I felt like I'd been there before. And when I hopped off the train, this lady came up to me and was like, "Torero," as if I was like some famous bullfighter that she recognized. Anyways, it was just, I don't know about you, but this conversation can go on for days. But what if reincarnation was real? Who knows? But again, let me just play this video and send you on your day, because I know you got much better things to do than talk to me. Let me bring this up.
Let's see it.
Moments just before the bull run, dude. Getting amped up, excited, nervous all at once. Jesus be with me. Make the big goals! You're right. Oh my gosh.
I'm jealous because you're more Spaniard than I am, because I haven't actually run in the Bulls and you have. So you're more Spanish than I am. I'm jealous actually to see that you've done it. It's something I have in my checklist. I still have on my to-do list. I still have to go to Pamplona. I lived there for 1 year, but the city changes completely for San Fermines. It's a completely different city, there's very few Spanish people, a lot of people from outside of the country. As you said, it's full of wine in the streets. So yeah, it was definitely an experience.
It was an incredible experience, Fran. And man, the very first day it's a week-long experience, a week-long festival. But the very first day, there's no running, there's no bullfights. And I didn't go to any bullfights, but it's just celebration that very first day. And we didn't have a hotel or any place to stay in Pamplona. We left all of our stuff. Our hotel it wasn't even a hotel. What is it called? The hostel that we stayed at was in Madrid. And so we left all of our stuff there, took a train up to Pamplona, and we knew that we were going to be celebrating for the whole day. And we figured that maybe we'll get lucky and find a place to crash at. We didn't. I ended up sleeping on a park bench that night, and as they cleaned up the whole streets and everything, and people were walking all past me, I had a shirt over my head just so I can get 1 hour of sleep before you start, because you had to get in line by 6 a.m. and everyone's still partying till 2, 3, 4. That's why it's like we had to just say, all right, hey guys, we all got in a row of park benches and just took a quick nap while everyone's walking by us, and we're wearing our white sashes and red garments, whatever. It was a wild experience. And I highly recommend, once XRP moons, you go up there and run with the Bulls, and I'll join you. But But that was once you got past Dead Man's Corner, because once I did, that's when the bulls started running by and racing by. But I think what's more dangerous is the amount of people that are standing alongside the walls and crowds that don't really give a lot of avenue or space for the people that are running to actually run. It was like you're more fighting the people that are bunching in towards the sides of the walls rather than the bulls. And man, talk about a high adrenaline experience. I had never sweat, Fran, more than that experience in my life. Let's just say the gun goes off, you're running at 7, you're in the arena by 7:15. I was drenched in sweat. It was probably from the booze from the night before, but the adrenaline was out of this world. So I highly recommend to those watching or to you, to give it a try. We only live once. We only live once, maybe. But anyways, hey, I appreciate you, Fran. Thanks for stopping by, and look forward to having you back on soon. Okay.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure being in your channel, connecting with your community, with the people of your channel, your audience. And yeah, looking forward to connecting again, and let's speak soon.
Yeah. Love you mucho, Fran. Take care, sir.
Take care. Bye-bye.